Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Smason, and welcome to NOLA Theater Talk. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about a different kind of theater. Instead of the theater of the stage, we're going to talk about film theater. And the film that we're talking about is called City of a Million Dreams. City of a Million Dreams was the brainchild of several people, most notably Jason Berry, who is the author of a book of the same title, City of a Million Dreams, as well as Timothy Watson and Simonette Berry, who would be Jason Berry's daughter. Those are the three producers who have put together their resources and over the course of several years come out with the end product, which is the film City of a Million Dreams. So again, I'd like to tell everybody that they're going to be with us in just a few moments. And we, again, are trying our best to do this a little different kind of application like we did Monday. We had a focus on the cultural arts with Anwar Nasir and Claire Buravec from the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra and the New Orleans Opera Association, respectively. But tonight we're concentrating on film, but it is theater, if you will, of the streets. This is about the second line culture and the jazz funerals. And those of you who love New Orleans and love all the different permutations of jazz and traditions that we have here will be very impressed with this film. It has much to say about New Orleans, but it specifically concentrates on that particular part of the community. But there's much more to this. This is really a New Orleans story. It's not just a Black community New Orleans story. And we will get into that and delve into why this is really a story about the whole of the city in just a little bit. I wanted to also let everybody know that we have another group of individuals coming on Monday's show that will be about theater. It will be specifically about the Sanger Theater. So if you're interested about the Sanger Theater's upcoming Broadway Across New Orleans series, or perhaps to find a little bit more about the New Orleans Theater Association, both David Skinner of the Ambassador Theater Group and Mike Mitchell of the New Orleans Theater Association will be with us, and they will gather their forces together and talk about the Sanger and the New Orleans Theater Association on Monday night. So hopefully you'll check that out as well. Let's go ahead and welcome our guest tonight. First of all, the author of the book and the director, if you will, of this project, City of a Million Dreams. Here's Jason Berry. Jason, welcome to the show. And also coming in just a little bit, we're going to have Tim Watson, who is also a producer, but he was also critically, the editor of the film. And really, I know that you talked about the editor being critical to any film, but specifically this film, how important he was. And we're going to talk about that. But first off, Jason, welcome to the show. We want to thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
You all are going to be taking part in the gala tomorrow night
Right.
as part of the New Orleans Film Festival. That's why we wanted to have you on tonight before you had to get too bogged down with having to welcome all those many dignitaries and members of the New Orleans Film Festival and all those attendees and shaking hands, etc. So we wanted to get you in ahead of time to do that and be here to explain what's going on. But also, I wanted to sort of backtrack a little bit and talk about the process and the journey that this film took into getting into fruition. We're going to do that in just a second. While I'm here, I'm going to let you know that in conjunction with the New Orleans theme, I made a vieux carré tonight. So a vieux carré is 3/4 of an ounce of rye whiskey, similar to a Sazerac. 3/4 of an ounce of a cognac or brandy, about 1/4 of an ounce of Benedictine, and a couple of dashes of Peychaud's and Angostura bitters. And then that's the recipe I've got, and I'm sticking with it. And of course, this is in a crew of Toth glass, so I think that is appropriate. This is from their coronation ball that they had. So cheers to you. I didn't know what you brought in the room. I know Tim brought something, and you were going to bring something.
I have a glass of 2016 Médoc Graysac. It's a lovely a bottle of red Bordeaux. So salute.
2016. Now that would have been around the time you were preparing your galleys and sending off City of a Million Dreams to the book pub. Now, where was it published out of Baton Rouge? Where did it get published?
No. It was published by the University of North Carolina Press,
Okay.
which has a long history of publishing books that deal with the emergent South post-war, as well as
Yes.
the history of the pre-civil rights era. But what I tried to do in this book, Alan, was use the tradition of funerals with music as a lens on how New Orleans evolved. So it's an approach to history that I think is unique. I did everything I could to follow the long line of funerals from the beginning of the colony to the present day. And, generation after generation, these funerals leading up to the birth of jazz and then coming forward another century and some, give us a great sense of what the city was like and how it evolved. So that was the premise of the book. The film is has a tighter lens on what we call jazz funerals, and it follows the story of the city through a series of these funerals, featuring Dr. Michael White, the clarinetist and composer, and Deb Big Red Cotton, the videographer and blogger, who was so much part of our production and sadly is no longer with us.
And we're going to get into Deb as well as another unseen hand, or perhaps a seen hand, but whose visage, whose face doesn't really appear within the context of the film. Jules Kahn. We're going to get into their contributions to the film as far as it goes. But you did say something to me once in an earlier opportunity that we had to get together and talk, and you said that every film truly deserves a good film editor, and only good films will have good film editing. And so I'm going to bring in the film editor now, Timothy Watson. I did want to say thank you, Tim, for being with us tonight. There's all three of us in the room now, and again, I wanted to get a little bit of your take, how you got involved in the project too, because Jason's talking about he started off. This whole project really started off back when you were starting to film many of the jazz funerals, etc. Some 25 plus years ago, huh?
Yeah, that's correct.
And again, Tim, you had the benefit of going through some very important historic footage, and pulling that historic footage, which is now at the Historic New Orleans Collection, and going through all of that and pulling out some amazing photography. And when I say amazing, I mean there are jazz funerals of people who have long gone, and there are people that you were able to capture on screen, Jason, that have recently passed away in more recent times. But the person I was talking about earlier, Jules Kahn, he actually went to the jazz funerals on Mardi Gras, and he went out into the community and he filmed these on 16 millimeter film, which you said was almost unheard of for a private individual to be doing to the extent that he did it. The large numbers of hours. And I think you said something like a couple of hundred hours, perhaps, of these films that exist. Not all on Mardi Gras or second line culture, but quite a number about them, right?
Yeah, Alan. Hey, thanks for having us on tonight. I really appreciate it. To your first question, I met Jason, I don't know, I think it's been a little more than 20 years ago on another project, but he kept telling me about this project and the footage that had just at that point had just been shot, and some editing had been done to create a teaser to help with fundraising and such. So I was very interested in it from the beginning, and then finally got to start looking at it. So Jason and I have been colleagues for a long time, and it's been a great working relationship. And we've worked on projects big and small together, so it's been great.
Well, you obviously gel very well. So yeah, go ahead.
The footage at the Historic New Orleans Collection, the Jules Kahn footage, I had been in that collection before for 2 or 3 other films, and had fished out certain, just very specific things, but never looked at the whole thing. So this gave us a chance to look at the entire collection, because that was the subject of this film, Second Lines in Jazz Funerals. And it was amazing. He did such a good job for 30 or 40 years filming. Oftentimes during any given year, he may have been out there every Sunday filming. So there is so much material there. And of course, you can just pile it all in and see the footage, but the important thing was to find footage that was really relevant and meaningful to our film and the people in our film. So we had some amazing discoveries. Papa John Joseph, who was an ancestor of Dr. Michael White, when we came across his birthday party at Preservation Hall, and he was born in 1877. So his birthday party and then his funeral shortly after that, unfortunately, at St. Augustine Church in Tremay. What a find. And so we made good use of that in the film. One particular shot that I'm really happy with, it's a very short shot, but Jason interviewed Milton Batiste and Harold Dejon, and we came across a piece of footage where they're together in the 60s at some point, just for a moment, but it's rare to see them shoulder to shoulder while they're out on the street playing a parade. So
yeah,
that was, I think I even slowed that down a little bit just to make it last a little longer. So that kind of thing, you just have to watch every frame to find that kind of stuff. And of course, who wouldn't want to sit down and watch all that material? And I think I did not keep track, but there's at least 200 hours of it, maybe a little bit more. So it's a lot of great stuff. And I would just tell your viewers that all that material is now on the HNOC website. So go to town and enjoy watching.
So I wanted to try to see if I could show some of the some of these pieces, and I know I've got a couple of things. I've got a one that I wanted to load up right now that I'm dealing with, which is on somebody who we mentioned earlier, Deb Cotton, and her story unfortunately became a more of a central point. We talked about Dr. Michael White, of course, the wonderful eminent clarinetist who of course is an educator and historian. But he's just one of the voices. There's many voices in this. You had done some interviews, Jason, with him, and one poignant one in which you followed him on the day that he actually returned to his home after Hurricane Katrina in October, I think of 2005, and he had just this tragic storyline of him going in and sifting through all the rubble. And I mean, you could see how much this was affecting him, et cetera. And you were cataloging, you were chronicling this, much like Jules was chronicling the earlier jazz funerals. And in a sense, this was a funeral for his home when he returned. Yeah. And again, he became a central voice within, because he connected to, as you mentioned, Papa John Joseph, who had been one of the earlier practitioners of jazz. And I think they mentioned that he'd been an associate of Louis Armstrong and some of the other very early players. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And so there's that connection to the beginnings of jazz and the early parts of the jazz funerals, or the funerals with music, as many of the people you mentioned had referred to them. And then you've got Deb Cotton, and she's a more modern person who's also doing the same thing that Jules Kahn was doing back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and cataloging, these incredible street parades, if you will, theater of the streets. That's what I call them.
Alan, just one moment. With all due respect to Jules, who was a dear friend of mine, I think there's quite a difference with Deb, and it goes something along these lines. Deb was an advocate for the second line community in what she saw, I think rightly so, as a tense relationship with the New Orleans Police Department, certainly with City Hall under Ray Nagin. There was and particularly after the hurricane, when these groups started coming back and regrouping and sewing the beautiful costumes and starting to parade again, there were a lot of conflicts with the police. And Deb was using her forum, if you will, as a blogger for Gambit to, carry the cause of the clubs. So as much as I revere Jules, and as Tim and I both value him immeasurably for the contribution that his shooting, his footage, his archival work now makes to this film, Deb is a more catalytic personality in a sense than Dr. White, who is a scholar and, of course, a supreme musician, clarinetist. But his search for origins, for where his ancestral line began and how the music entered, that's one strand in the film. Deb's advocacy, for these groups is another.
Yeah. Well, again, I had a picture that I showed earlier. This is Deb Cotton, and again, for those of you who are not familiar with her, she went by the name Big Red as well. But you can see the absolute joy in her face as she's capturing these images on essentially a video camera, not a film camera, but a video camera. But she obviously was enjoying herself to the max that she possibly could. And I'm gonna show you something that you haven't seen that I was able to get for the article I wrote for the Crescent City Jewish News. This is a photo of none other than Jules Kahn, and again, this is an I thought this is was maybe a little bit older, but I think this is like in the early 70s or so. But I thought I'd add that as well to let people see there he is in all this splendor, and you can see if I take the banner off, you'll see that camera around his neck that he's got, but I don't really see a film camera. So he was maybe not shooting that day on the film. But interestingly enough, there's a lot. Let me go into what we were talking about. You were just talking about Deb. Let me go into a part of your film that talks about her contributions and her life and how she got in. And hopefully on the other side of this, we can come back and talk about her input into what she did and how she became a part of this film. So here's an excerpt from City of a Million Dreams, and we ask y'all to stick around, and we'll be right back right after.
I've always believed you don't choose New Orleans chooses you. It lives in a person, and once they meet New Orleans, they know there's no middle ground.
As a little girl growing up in Texas, the names New Orleans and Louisiana sounded so mysterious and exotic to me. I asked my parents if we could go there on vacation. The answer was always no. Then, in my early 20s and able to do as I damn well pleased, I took a little look-see trip to resolve my curiosity. I felt like I was being pulled into a dream, so very surreal and familiar, like a memory from another time long ago. Finally, I decided to cut my losses in hard-hearted Hollywood and move to New Orleans. My goal was to become a food writer, and I'd enrolled in culinary school. Magnificent mealtime moments make me regret not getting my behind here years earlier. But instead of writing about good food in the city I love, I write about the city I love and eat good food.
This is an old city of generations of people that never left. And so there's a long memory arc.
Everybody calls you baby and sweetheart. Neighbors come over unannounced and ask you to run them by the store. love bike riding along Bayou St. John and standing on the levee at night, staring out at the river. New Orleans lured me from my dark, brooding funk and tossed me into the fire of dancing black folks and brass instruments. I began to feel alive again.
Wow. And that's just a little snippet of what you're going to see. Anybody who hasn't seen this film, they're really in for a treat. And now, again, somebody may say, well, that was really wonderful. You almost have had great foresight to have captured those words being spoken by Deb Cotton. Those are Deb Cotton's words, right? But they're actually spoken by one of her good friends, right, after she had passed.
That's correct. Andrea Quealy, who is a professor of Afro-Caribbean Studies at Florida International University in Miami, was a close friend of Deb. Dre had spent a year on a sabbatical doing research in New Orleans. They became close friends. They remained good friends. She was literally in the room with her when Deb passed away, along with two of her other friends, Annie and Linda Houston, members of the synagogue. And, Tim and I and Simonette, my daughter, the other co-producer, listened to the eulogy that that Andrea gave at
Right.
Deb's service. And her voice had such a similarity that I asked her if she would consider reading some of the passages of the book and that we developed in the script. And so she did, and I think did a wonderful job.
Well, there's so much about this film to love. And I'm not trying to give you a big inflated head and whatever. I've seen a lot of documentaries. This one really struck me, not just because, I really felt like it was a truly New Orleans film, as I said, that anybody who's from here, or who's lived here any, length of days, will come to know that this, represents, as I said earlier, the whole of the city, the heartbeat of New Orleans, the part that makes it such a special place. And again, I think that's reflected in Tim's editing, in your parts that you shot, the parts that others contributed to, such as Jules and Deb. But in many ways, the voices of the people who it recounts, Dr. Michael White, Greg Stafford, even people who are no longer with us, Milton Baptiste, Harold Dejan. These are people who were integral parts of the jazz industry here in New Orleans, who are no longer with us. And your film brings them back to life in a way that few others have. So, I congratulate you on what you've been able to achieve. That's fabulous. Tim, in terms of there are other aspects of the film. I know that one of the more important parts for you, and I think the part that Simonette had worked on perhaps more than others, and you can correct me if I'm not, if I'm overstating that, but the opening that you all did, which was an attempt to recreate the circles, if you will, that were at Congo Square when the early slaves were getting together at the marketplace there and then dancing. I believe you called them rain dances and dances to the ancestors. Is that
ring
dances. Sorry,
ring dances. Yeah.
So they were all basically circular, and that you liken the fact that when the European marching bands came in, which was linear, and that the circles met the linear, that the second line came about as a result, more or less, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to boil it down, but that opening sequence that you did was very integral to what you wanted to describe, how they looked, how they danced, and you really got down into authentic costuming, etc., and shooting that. And I thought that was something. And again, Simonette had a big hand in that, right?
Absolutely, yes. She was the unit production manager. Tim, you want to explain a little more about that?
Yeah, well, I think if I can speak to how it came about early on. I mean, Jason, you had this idea
You can break it up a little bit.
Certainly before your oral history interviews, and then it was confirmed after, especially with Sybil Kine, and then some of the other interviews, that there had to be, Congo Square had to be represented on screen by real people. And so putting together an imagination or a reimagining of Congo Square was always an important goal for this film. And that's hard to do in a documentary, because it's one thing to go out on the street with a crew and film, getting permissions from musicians and such when you do that. But to film an entire sequence feature style, which is basically a feature level set, is a huge undertaking for a documentary. So Simonette and others, but especially Simonette, really pulled that together. That was an amazing feat. We shot that, I think it was 2018, in fall of 2018. So locations, the entire crew, all the catering, all that stuff. And so it was a huge part of the film. And as we thought about it afterwards, we realized that was a point in time when we all got re-energized about the project. Oftentimes when you are in the middle of something and it seems like it's never going to finish, it's hard to keep going. And for creative energy, for financial energy, for lots of reasons. But after that, and after we saw that footage and how good it came out, thanks to everyone's really hard work there, the crew, the dancers, the musicians, we realized, okay, we really have something here now. We're going to make good use of it. So there's probably 10 or 11 minutes of it in the film. And there's another, at least that much, and probably more, that we feature 3 dances, and there's 3 more that are not in the film. So maybe those will come up one day.
Part 2.
Yes.
Alan, there's one thing I want to add, kind of a footnote to what Tim just said. The Monique Moss, who is a diaspora scholar and choreographer at Tulane, a woman of enormous talent, was really the architect of the dramatic sequences themselves. She rehearsed all of the musicians, all of the dancers we hired over at the dance department at Tulane, in fact, for a week before we went out to Belle Chase, where the Plaquemine Parish government very kindly gave us use of a large field for a very nominal fee. And Monique's contribution to the film, she and Simonette worked very closely together, but Monique, as the kind of artistic director of that sequence, played an enormous role.
Well, I want to show that, if I may. This is the real opening of your film, and this will be, for those of you who are getting tired of seeing clips, this will be the only other clip we're going to show tonight. So, but it's about 2.5 minutes or so, but it's a real opening, and I think it's really beautifully tendered. I think that it's accurate in its depiction, and I just really want everybody to see the work that you're doing. And we're going to pay attention to one name at the very beginning of the film, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit about his contribution.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beauty of the earth to share with one another. We are commemorating what our ancestors did, and we thank you for the wonders, the seeds planted in Congo Square. We ask your blessing, because we do this in their ancestral memory.
This city wears 2 faces. Just like the Mardi Gras masks. Tragedy and comedy. African spiritualists say that a heart attack is just another term for a broken heart. Personally, I believe the city is stronger than all of us.
The jazz funeral helps us to transition from death to a new existence, a new spiritual existence.
No place else in the United States is going to let Black people take over the streets for 4 hours long. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Here you can shout, you can create, you can be transformed 4, 5, 6 hours on end into another world that really sets you free.
I had a question. Was that last scene taken at Jean Lafitte Park, where Dr.
That's actually Studio in the Woods.
Oh, the Studio
where
in the Woods.
Dr.
Okay,
White,
I was trying to figure out where that was. It reminded me of that place.
2 years after Katrina, he did an artist recovery residency there, which we feature later on in the film, and so that's where that was. Yeah.
So what I was talking about, that's a beautiful opening for the film, and again, the first name that we see is in association with Bernard F. Pettengill Jr. Now, he's not here tonight to talk about his input, his importance to this film, but you wouldn't have had this film finished were it not for him, right?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. Biff Pettengill, that's his nickname, is the executive producer of the film. We went to Jesuit High School together many years ago. We did have electricity back then. And he and I have had a long friendship. He's followed my work, the books I've done, the films that I've made. And we did a Kickstarter in 2017. And, you know, we were trying to raise money to do the Congo Square sequence. And I had him on the email list, and he lives in West Palm Beach now. He's a forensic economist. They are well paid. And anyway, he called me up and he said, yeah, I got your email. He said, I don't do, you know, we have certain charitable contributions that we do. And I said, look, this is not charity. You can't deduct it. And he said, well, how much do you need to finish your movie? And I swallowed and I uttered a 6-figure sum. And he said, oh, I can do that. Let's just talk about how much, you know, what's my stake? What are the percentages? And so within a few days, we had the paperwork done, and his investment was pivotal, because with his help, we were then able to do Congo Square. And of course, we moved on from there and eventually finished the film.
And this, you know, again, 25 years, you started filming. That sequence showed, you know, some of the more recent pictures, but it also blended some of the historic footage as well in that opening, did it not?
That's correct. For example, the scene of the men with the grand marshals in their tuxedos with the umbrellas, we call it the Umbrella Ballet. It's a wonderful sequence. That was shot in 1997. It was one of the first funerals, you know, that I followed. So, you know, Alan, I had other projects that I worked on after 2001, but I was getting the film prepared, you know, for, you know, the fundraising. And then when Katrina hit, it just upended everything. And we had to really go back and rethink what is this film about? And Michael's story as an everyman, if you will, of the city in the classical dramatic sense, really became a part of the story as it evolved.
Yeah. And Tim, when you actually started work editing the film, in earnest. When was that? Was that in what, couple
20,
3 years?
2015, we had kind of got regrouped and from other projects and really got going on this one, and started some fundraising and editing trailers and samples. And we did, but before I forget, that I did want to add, in that opening we just saw, another great piece of footage we came across was those young men near the at that point newly constructed I-10, right through New Orleans, doing a ring dance. And so when we found that, it was like, oh, we have to use this,
Right.
because it illustrates everything we've been talking about. So, but anyway, 2015, and then we started some structure work on the film. We started doing trailers, fundraising. Something we haven't talked too much about tonight, but is the European influence, and you did mention the lines of the European marching bands. We interviewed Bruce Rayburn, who helped us so much understand the Sicilian influence. So in the film, we kind of set it up as, of course, the Haitians, many Haitians came to New Orleans late 1700s and early 1800s, and then 100 years later, late 1800s, early 1900s, many Sicilians came. And so those influences were huge in New Orleans and in the second line in jazz funeral traditions. So that's another big part of it. So we visited with the Italian American societies, 3 or 4 of them here, got some photographs, and just started pulling together material. And documentaries take a long time. I mean, you can churn them out, but I think it's better, like any good sort of creative project, to let it take its own time and try to pull everything together that you can. So we did that for 5 years.
Yeah, and again, it shows that you weren't trying to just turn this out quickly. That you were really very considerate about what you were doing and trying to be as close to the original. I have to ask, Jason, you said originally you weren't sure whether or not the film was going to come out first or the book was going to come out first, but actually that the book did come out first. And maybe it was a blessing to a certain extent that you could maybe build some interest, people being able to hold the books in their hands and read a little bit more about it, that they maybe might not have noticed the film as much or cared about as much if they didn't
Alan,
know about it.
if you will give the screen over to Tim for about 30 seconds, I'll get a copy of the book and I'll hold it up. It's right over there in my library, but
not a problem. Not a problem. I tell you what I'll do. I'll remove you out of the script right now, and then it'll just be him and me, and you can go back and go get your book, and you can do it very quickly and quietly.
This is an amazing book, and we used it quite a bit in the edit room as a reference, of course.
All right. Here you go. Here's the book. Here's the plug.
That was quick.
Shameless plug, but that's okay. We don't have a problem with that.
That's right. That photograph on the cover is in the film, actually.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Michelle, the dancer who is on the cover, the paperback is out, by the way. We're having another screening, I should add, this coming Thursday night at Elmwood, and then on the
Friday night.
I'm sorry, Friday.
Right.
And then on the 26th, we're showing it at Metairie Country Day as well. Michelle, the dancer on the cover of the book, was, it's photographed by Herman Leonard, a beautiful photograph, which we licensed both for the book and the film. And then we flew her in from Dallas, where she has lived since Katrina. So she too is a part of the dancing sequence at Congo Square.
Well, I'm going to end, throughout the next, say, 20 minutes or so we have left of the show, I'm going to be showing some of the images that Simonet was very kind to send me. I'm going to try to get as many of them in as I can. Maybe we can talk a little bit about where they fit in the book, etc. Because we've pretty much talked about the film. We talked about Deb. We talked about Jules. We talked about your input, Jason, as a chronicler. Again, I had an opportunity today to do a story and finally put that up online of the Crescent City Jewish News about the 2 people we mentioned, Deb and Jules, and their Jewish aspects. And we talked actually to Leslie Usden, who, as you mentioned, was one of the people who had been in the room with Deb when she expired. And again, she talked about her Jewish connections to her spirituality and how she did that. So all of that, you want to learn a little bit more about that aspect. But much of the pictures that we have here are going to really be dealing with more of the Black culture, the jazz culture, the, if you will, the groups that put on the second lines and have been chronicled so much in this film. So again, I don't want to take away anything that we've already talked about. I mean, I think we pretty much have done great service to the film. We want to build interest. We want people to know that this film is going to be shown a couple of times at the New Orleans Film Festival. And again, I want to reiterate those dates again as we get a little bit closer towards the end.
Well, it's streaming now, Alan. People can see it online if they want by going.
Oh, okay.
By going to the website of the New Orleans Film Festival, and it's
yes,
up.
Today is opening day for the film festival,
Yeah.
and so
yeah,
there are films tonight, and then the films that are streaming, not all are streaming, but ours is, and some others are all available beginning today. Right now, you can go and watch this film right now.
So is that on like NOFF.org or something?
NewOrleansFilmSociety.org.
NewOrleansFilmSociety.org. Okay, so again, I'll try to put up a banner on that as we get closer. So maybe you can sort of like you give me a little bit of a couple of pointers of some of the photos that we've got here, and again, just you don't have to join in. This is one of the scenes that you were talking about from the early sequence, right? This is underneath the overpass, like near the Circle K. Is that near where it is somewhere?
Yes, that's St. Bernard and Claiborne, and this is Mother's Day 2016.
Okay,
That's right. Yeah,
and again, that's, you can see the players in the background there, and you've got the dancers, the Mardi Gras Indians. I assume that. Do you know who the group is there? That's in the. I guess it would be more like fuchsia in the front.
yes.
The original Big Seven.
Yeah, that is the Ed Buckner's group.
Is that the original Big Seven?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's what I thought it might be. Now here's a picture. Here's a picture of you guys. Now that's obviously Dr. Michael White with the clarinet there, and you, Jason, second from the left. But these are these gentlemen, I believe, are from the
Black Men of Labor.
Black Men of Labor. Very important group, right?
Absolutely, they're a pivotal part of the film. That was Greg Stafford to the right of Michael White, and I believe that is Graylin, who is to my right. Yeah, another member. We did a lot of filming with the Black Men of Labor for a number of reasons that unfold in the film. We wanted to spotlight one of the social aid and pleasure clubs, and by virtue of the relationship that many of the men in that group had with Danny Barker, one of the great elder statesmen of New Orleans music and culture, we decided to follow them on their parading day several years ago, because the group began in 1994 as a consequence of Danny Barker's jazz funeral. As you learn in the film, he did not want a big second line. He was worried about the raucous behavior at some, not all, of the second lines, and especially with the drug culture coming down as hard as it has in recent years. And so they decided, after putting on a beautiful march after his death, that they wanted to do this on an annual basis. And so they created the organization, which is really a standout cultural group in the city now, Black Men of Labor.
Yeah, I've got a couple of pictures of them. This is one of the, I think, one of the gentlemen, if I can get it to come up. Hold on one second.
Yeah,
there we go.
That's Bruce Sunpie Barnes.
I was about to say, it looks a lot like somebody I know named Bruce Sunpie Barnes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. And then here's another one of the Black Men of Labor. And again, beautiful costumes, etc. And I'm trying to see if it's Well, here's
Great.
again
That's
Dr.
Fred
Mike.
Johnson right in the front. He's the president of Black Men of Labor.
And
Okay.
he's a major figure in the film. And then,
Huge part of the film.
yeah, I think Sunpai is to the left, and I believe that's Grayland, if I'm not mistaken, or Todd to the right of, to the right on the screen of Fred, who is in the middle.
And again, the name Black Men of Labor, what does that refer to?
Well, as Fred Johnson says in the film, in his interview, we wanted to show that Black men pay mortgages, pay tuitions, have families, raise children, and we can still love our culture. That's pretty much a verbatim quote from the film, from Fred. And I think, when the people who see this film look at the way these men get together, how they plan, the way in which the suits are, handed out name by name, it's a very organized group. And, it's an assertion of African-American pride in the best sense.
Yeah. Well, let me continue while we have still the time to go. This is Edwin Harrison's funeral, and that again, the traditional cortege, I guess, that is transporting his body.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get a plug and plug in my laptop. Excuse me for 1 second, Tim, if you can handle this.
Well, I was just going to add a couple frames back, the line of the Black Men of Labor. I think it's important to note that here they're singing "Amazing Grace," and it was towards the end of the second line there, and a very important part of their second line. I also wanted to add in that first photo, Greg Stafford is there with Dr. White, but he is in the suit from Black Men of Labor. Greg's and there's Greg right there. Greg's a band leader of the Young Tuxedo Brass Band and has been a mentor to many, probably hundreds of musicians. But he's also a member of Black Men of Labor. So one day a year during that second line, he is in the suit of the Social Aid and Pleasure Club as opposed to the uniform of the band. So Greg is an amazing player. There's Dr. Michael White and Greg at the funeral of Lois Edward Eli, who died in 2017.
Yeah. So while we talked about Jason and his wine, we didn't talk to you, Tim. What did you bring in the room tonight?
I have a lovely red wine from, I think, 2021.
A little young.
Only the best here.
A little young.
For the editors of the film. So.
I mean, 2021. Was it the Vintage Tuesday or?
I think it was last week. Yeah.
Anyway, let me get back to some of these other pictures. We just had a picture of Greg Stafford with Dr. Michael White. Here's a photo that you had in the film of him playing at Whitney Plantation. And again, an opportunity to talk about the scenes you shot there. I'd never been to Whitney, and I hope one day to go because I think it's an important place to go. But I just really have not had the time and the ability to go yet. But I will eventually go because I think it's an important thing for me to go to see. But there are apparently, and you can just see it in that picture, like statuary of perhaps made out of bronze or something. Couldn't tell what they were made out of, but of depicting the slaves who were on Whitney Plantation, and then you can see just like out of focus, he's playing to them, sort of playing to his ancestors, etc. And very, very evocative of returning to visit the graves of your ancestors. It's a very emotionally filled part of the film there, and I didn't know it was Whitney until it came onto the film, but I knew exactly what Whitney's all about. And if you don't know, it is a plantation that's dedicated to the story of the slavery trade and how that impacted the African American community here. So again, an important part of what you do is you talk about the culture. I wasn't sure who the skeletons were, but again, they have pictures of the musicians. You have an amazing picture of Dr. White he must have been what, like in his teens practically. I mean, of him dressed up. And I did wear a special tie, which you can't see unless I shift down my I don't know if you can see that.
Ah,
The
very
tie
good.
there.
Yes.
Is that an Indian?
It is a Mardi Gras Indian and
Ah,
a Tabasco tie to be actually
oh,
accurate. I got that, believe it or not, in out of New Iberia on Avery Island.
oh,
Uh,
yeah.
back when they were selling ties. I don't know if they still are, but I bought this one, and I get more comments on this tie than many of the other ties, because I'm noted for wearing a lot of sort of wild ties. I have ties with the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and
Oh,
the Three Stooges and things of that sort. But this one, I get a lot of comments on people. People really love this tie. They say it's unusual, and I tend to agree with them quite a bit. We're getting
Those images of Dr. White you mentioned. Of course, we have one of him in high school in the high school band at St. Augustine High School. There's also a couple. Jules Kahn did get a couple of shots of him. Very quick shots when he was in Doc Pollin's band.
right.
And we see him as a very young man marching and at that point second lines, but also church parades. And it's also interesting, a lot of those were upriver, like in Hanville. There's some beautiful footage of parades along the levee upriver from New Orleans.
So again, you're documenting the history of New Orleans in many ways, and again, the focus of the film is on Dr. Michael White, his return to New Orleans, especially that you filmed, but his history that goes back to Papa Joseph that we were talking about, Papa John Joseph, and also the new history that's going on with the aspects of Deborah Conton that we were mentioning. There's a lot going on in this film, and towards the end, the film starts to focus more on Deborah because of essentially it's revealed that she's passed and that she has died from the injury she sustained, and then they talk about her compassion, her forgiveness, her looking for atonement for the people who essentially eventually 4 years later deprived her of her right to life, but that she had used that opportunity to preach, if you will, to talk about how important it was to her as a spiritual person to try to see that these people were not put away for life, that they had some opportunity to restore themselves to society and become contributors rather than to be people who were basically riding on society rather than being able to contribute. And again, it's all put in the film. You've beautifully captured her life and her words, and so many other people, Michael White, Greg Stafford, and so many other people affected, by this history, and almost to a certain extent, something you had talked about, Jason, that Jules Kahn had talked to you about, that the jazz funerals, he said, of the early '60s were almost akin to what he described them as almost as like a social or cultural ballet. Is that correct?
No, that's not quite what he said.
What he
Well, the term he used in the conversation we had years ago, it was in 1995, was that the funerals of the 60s were, quote, like urban ballets.
Urban ballet, sorry.
Yeah, and when you look at the sequence, just to cite one example, from 1997 of the second line grand marshals in their tuxedos with their umbrellas. It's such a beautiful moment of that spontaneous dancing. And in fact, in the edit room over many times, when we were trying to figure out where that scene best fit, we referred to that footage as the Umbrella Ballet. The umbrella, by the way, or the parasol in Africa, was a symbol of royalty. And so the carryover to New Orleans through the dances at Congo Square, where ultimately the umbrella was resurrected, you might say, was a tribute to the status and the role of a given person in the community who had passed away, perhaps no longer royalty in the strict sense of the mother culture, but nevertheless an honored person who would be ennobled in the funeral that was being held.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. Again, I think to use the term of ballet to the jazz funeral is something that most people wouldn't think about or equate. That we tend to think of ballet as something, that is much more structured and perhaps a little bit more formal, in terms of what's going on. But for him to say that, gives you a little bit more of a sweeping understanding of what went on before, and that there is almost, I guess, regrettably, your film is cataloging some of the loss of what was tradition and what we have today that still, because
Well, I'm
change,
not. Hold on. I'm
yeah,
not sure I would agree with that.
yeah,
Certainly, there is a tension between continuity and change. That is certainly a central thread in the film. But I think much of what this film conveys is the strength and the beauty and the integrity of these traditions, even as we live in a time of gun violence. And of course, not every funeral by any stretch is
right,
marred by people shooting off guns. But, you know, we have a section in the film on the yellow fever epidemics of the 19th century. And really, gun violence today is like the yellow fever epidemics of more than a century ago. But I think the sense of transcendence and joy and resurrection that threads through this film is the ultimate statement about hope for the human condition.
okay, all right, I'll grant you that. um, let me just follow up again, and again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Simonette was invited to be on the show tonight, but that she had family obligations, and always family comes first, and we understand that. But she certainly, if we ever have another opportunity to meet, or she wants to come on, that we are able to discuss the film again, I would certainly invite her back on in an instant, because I know she was, the part of the triad here, uh,
Yeah.
between the three of you. And I'm sorry that she's not represented tonight, but she had some wonderful things to say. Go ahead, if you would, please. Let me hear from Jason, you, I guess, as to where the shows are that people can go see them aside from the streaming. Start with the streaming, and then the in-person shows that we can talk about before we wrap things up.
Well, you can go on the NewOrleansFilmSociety.org and see the film online for a modest fee over the next almost 2 weeks. Next Friday, the film will be shown at the Elmwood out in Kenner, and on the 26th of this month at Metairie Country Day School. We have other outreach screenings that are coming together that will be announced on the website, cityofamilliondreams.com. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. And again, I want to thank you for being with me tonight. Again, Tim, great job in editing once again. And again, you're working on a new project that you can't talk about, right?
That is exactly right. We don't want to, we don't want to jinx it. So thank you.
Right.
I really appreciate you having us on.
Again, congratulations on the book and now the film. I hope that you'll know that I'm doing my best to help you get the word out, and we're going to hopefully get, we can hopefully show this to other people. This will be on my wall later on tonight. I'll put that up, but it's also going to be on the theatercriticism.com Facebook page. If anybody's a member of the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group, they're already seeing it right now, but they can go back and see it. And then we're going to also have it on YouTube, which is where most of the people are going to see this, because it'll be available for you to see on demand whenever you want. I'm going to ask both you, Jason, and Tim, to stick around just for a few moments, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody because it is already 9 o'clock. Again, thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Alan Smason. Again, it's been my pleasure to be with you on NOLA Theater Folk Talk, and we're basically talking tonight about film, but we're going to talk about theater on Monday with the Ambassador Theater Group's David Skinner and the New Orleans Theater Association's Mike Mitchell. Until that time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you at the theater.